24. We have a
Recording in progress.
good evening. Welcome to the Westford Select Board meeting of November 12th, 2024. We have executive session at 6:30, which we will hopefully adjourn to soon, and return back at 7 o'clock. So with that, I need a motion to enter executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of 65 Main Street, 73 Main Street, and 170 Plain Road. As an open meeting, it may have a detrimental effect upon the negotiating position of the public body.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, John?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
Can we just add also, you're going to review and approve executive session minutes just for the members of the public to be clear on that as well.
Okay, so yes, we'll review and approve executive session minutes for June 11th, 2024, but not release.
Correct. Okay, we're now into executive session. recording already, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, in the case, welcome back to the Select Board meeting of November 12th, 2024. We'll start, or restart, with the Pledge of Allegiance led by John. Under open forum, first I wanted to mention that Governor Healy proclaimed yesterday to be Veterans Day, but I also wanted to acknowledge that Westford celebrated that, or commemorated that yesterday. Many thanks to Terry Stater for a wonderful ceremony. I had a couple of people, actually Andrew was with me a couple of nights ago. It was probably the best they've seen in some years, so thank you, Terry, for that. Also, thanks to our Parks Department, because we had a beautiful day, and they had a beautiful common for us to celebrate on. And if you were there Memorial Day, you saw that big limb hang up in the tree. Kyle took care of that. It was gone, so we had a nice, and no comments about safety. It was always safe, but it was all cleaned out. So thanks, everybody, for making that day a success. Anything else for open forum?
I do have one thing if the board doesn't. So thank you. Just want to remind residents and others that there have been a lot of brush fires in Massachusetts. It's been a very dry season, so please be cognizant of open burning at this point in time. Also want to thank members of our fire department who are helping with the larger fires. There's been convoys that have been set up and that have gone out from Westford Fire up to Middleton and Salem, and also the water department is being very cognizant of the water use, so please be cognizant yourself for water restrictions. Thank you.
Wendy?
Wendy Gloyd, 16 Pleasant Street. Just want to give a big shout out to everybody who worked on the town presidential election. Went really well, smoothly. Lori Shaw had a lot on her plate, but she also helped us with working on Commission on Disability improvements to make the voting more accessible and easier. And Patty Doobie jumping in and helping as well. A couple other events going on in town. There is a DARBA event hosted by the Westford Academy South Asian Student Association. It's going to be the 3rd annual DARBA, and it's happening this Friday, November 15th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Westford Academy cafeteria. And they want to have more than just teenagers come to the event. So we've been working together to try to pull in more of the community to enjoy this wonderful.
For the benefit of the community, do you know what DARBA is?
So DARBA is a creative wording blend of Diwali, the celebration, and Garba, which is a line dance event, a line dance thing. So you will actually, if you come, you will have people directing you on how to do this choreographed line dance, and most of us are newbies, starters, so don't feel overwhelmed, and enjoy. Just wear something vibrant or wear what you want to wear and have a great time. Also, Commission on Disability is having a separate event, the Inclusive Friendsgiving Party, and that is going to be 12th grade and up. It's going to be our first ever on Friday, November 22nd from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Rodenbush Community Center. And Westford Remembers is helping with refreshments. So this will be a great way to foster inclusion for our anyone with disabilities, when we will have quiet spaces for folks who need sensory time to relax. Also, beginning tomorrow.
Well, just to be clear, it's You can be please come,
Yeah.
disabled or not. It's meant to be a community event.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's 18 to 80 or 118, whatever. There's no,
Yeah.
you could be a teenager too. There's no alcohol. But
Yeah.
we've been saying, it's a mixer for everybody wants to come.
Right, thank you. And Transgender Awareness Week starts tomorrow. It's November 13 through 19. It's fixed days. It's not a Monday through Friday kind of a thing. And that happens across the country to enhance understanding of transgender issues and unique challenges faced by communities across the U.S. And on November 20th, there will be a Transgender Day of Remembrance, and that one is for transgender individuals who have lost their lives or suffered violence. The Chelmsford Center for the Arts will be having a vigil for that occasion on Saturday, November 23rd, beginning at 6 p.m. So I encourage everyone to participate in these meaningful events. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, that being the, Tom?
No, I wanted to say how much I appreciate you recognizing the election workers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So moving on to our consent agenda, I want to take this in two pieces. You'll know why in a minute. So first, there is a special license for Festival of Lights. Applicant is Sandra Habe, November 30th, 2024, from 3 to 6 p.m. at Good Picking Farm on 5 and 6 Gould Road. If you see that in our packet, a piece of that event is a fundraiser for Westford members, of which I'm on the board. Therefore, I need to abstain from this vote. So that's just why we keep taking it separately. So is a motion to approve
So moved.
such as publicity comments?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain. Then beyond that, so other events for the agenda, a street closure for live nativity. Dave Welsh of United Methodist Church is asking for this on December 15th from 4 to 6 p.m. It'll be at 10 Church Street where it meets Broadway Street. Also a town common bandstand request for a wedding ceremony rehearsal. Ellen Martins is the requester, May 30th, 2025, 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. And on May 31st, I guess if the practice goes well, a wedding at the bandstand from 3 to 6 p.m. And good wishes to the bride and groom. And then also a request for the 49th Annual Strawberry Festival on the Town Common. Jess Anderson of First Parish Church United making the request for June 14th, 2025 with a rain date of June 15th from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And finally, a banner request for that event. The banner to be posted in front of First Parish Church from June 6th through June 16th, 2025. It's a motion to approve. Second? All in favor? Aye. And now, taking things a little bit out of order, we have an item from our town manager's report that I think will not be controversial. So, in particular, it's a grant of the Friends of Bruce Rubin Rail Trail to give supplies of $3,640 to the Public Works Department. Emily, you can fill me where I misspoke, if at all.
It's all perfect. I'm thrilled. I'm Emily Teller, 9 Texas Road, and along with Chris Barrett, we are co-board members for Westford for the Friends of the Bruce Green Rail Trail. And Kyle Fox came to us to request some funds for replacement parts for the safe crossing equipment that is in across Route 27 north of Concord, not north of Acton Road, whatever that road is, yeah. And we're happy to do this because this is a safe, it's increasing safety for trail users. What it means is that there won't be a delay. If one of those pieces breaks, then we'll have the parts here in stock and can be replaced right away. So there shouldn't be any time gap. In the past, sometimes there's been a time gap. And the Friends are happy to do this. We realize it might set a precedent for other towns, and we're happy to deal with that one by one. But it's also in the letter that you might have read that Tom Michaelman, our president, sent. We felt that we should set a condition that these funds will be a one-time gift to the town, and we're asking for you to approve that gift. Because what we want is to have those in reserve, and then as they're used up, to have the town repurchase those to have a reserve all the time, but that would be at the town's expense. And the memorandum of understanding for phase one, which Westford is in, is that if the towns maintain the trails in good condition, and this is part of the maintenance, that apparently Mass DOT will rebuild the trail should that ever be necessary, and who knows what the funding and all that is, but good maintenance is really important for the Bruce Green Rail Trail, and we appreciate what the town does all the time with clearing and sweeping and, you know, removing down trees and stuff like that, but we're happy to fund this request from Kyle for this equipment.
Is there a motion
Move
to
to
approve?
accept.
What did you say?
I said I'll move to accept.
Oh, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain, I guess, since.
You
All
can
right,
go.
then I'll vote on it, and I'll say, sure.
You're not receiving any money, you're spending money.
Yeah, you're not conflicted.
So, okay.
No, you aren't getting a financial gain yourself.
There we go.
There you
So
go.
go for it.
Thought we cleared
And
that up.
thank you to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
We are thrilled. Thank you. And you all will be getting your brand new newsletters that just were printed last weekend, probably tomorrow or the next day. I'll drop them off. So thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
For your support.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you for taking that aboard.
But back to our regular scheduled programming. We do have a discussion about the American Rescue Plan Act and some funding requests as we approach the end of our useful life of that money. And I'm guessing that Dane, you've got some, well, a status report, but also to sort of discuss the requests.
Sure. So I'm happy to report that we've had some closeouts as we've been working to clean up the projects that are outstanding and the money that won't be spent. So since we met last time, we have closed out close to $314,000 on 8 different projects, with the biggest being the senior center project for the HVAC of $290,000. So right now, our balance is $596,687 in the ARPA account. So the 5 different projects that are in front of you today, they total $301,175. But we also have a request to fund a health insurance trust as well with any of the leftover proceeds as a way just to spend the rest of the money there too. So, yeah, that's my summary. $596,000.
So we're happy to go project by project if the board wishes. Some of them are repeats and
Yeah, so
others are new.
We kind of, the fire department overtime and the crews that we've discussed before.
Right, and
So
you
I
just wanted
think-
to see that again.
But I think, yeah, I think we, the A and B are new, so I'd like to know. And
Sure. F is new as well.
And
Yes.
F is new.
Yep, so I can go through those new ones. So, and Mike will assist in some, and Mike, if you want to promote Matt Emanuel as well, from our technology department. So at the last time that we reviewed ARPA, I had said that I was going to preview a few things with you. One of those was the town hall meeting rooms hybrid meeting updates. So right now we're operating hybrid meeting with the Owl, which is over 4 years old now, and 2 televisions and a projector. We feel that we're coming to the end of their useful life for this room, but we feel that we can repurpose these materials in other rooms. So before you is a proposal to totally wire up this room with a new LED projector, so it will not have bulbs, with 2 new monitors, with cameras that would be in, I believe, all 4 corners of the room that would not only help with the Zoom, but would also connect to WestfordCAT. I also want to be clear that WestfordCAT has reviewed all of this proposal as well, and they're in agreement. Also, brand new microphones that would not be up and no wires. It would all just be within the tables. A console over here with a tablet type operation. We'd also be able to broadcast in the hall for those that need that. So am I missing anything in this room?
No, other than we'll have, actually, it'll be a microphone array. coming from
microphone
the
array,
ceiling
thank you,
Rather
yep.
than anything desk mounted.
Right, and then in conference room B, we'd be moving one of these monitors over to there, having a projector that comes down from the ceiling, and having a cable that can connect in for HDMI for that capability. So we feel that it would greatly upgrade the capabilities for this room as well as the other room for hybrid meetings, as well as other smaller meetings that are going to take place, and would be able to be sufficient for many years into the future as an investment for the town. Am I missing anything else related to
that.
No, but we're not to be downstairs, right? Just these two?
just these two? Correct, because the other room right now is being used for offices downstairs.
Any questions? Tom? Yeah, Chris?
Okay, so if we approve these funds, it would go to this company for this particular bid, or would this go out to bid?
It would go to this company. This is a under state contract.
You look like you have concerns.
It's a lot of money. I mean, it's just that this company seems to, you know, if you go to the very end, all the commissioning labor, engineering labor, installation labor, programming labor, project MNG labor, training labor, there's $25,000 in labor. That just struck me as a lot.
Yeah, you're right.
For this. So that was my only hope, is that maybe there was some way we could.
Perhaps you could ask them to sharpen their pencil.
We can always ask, but again, they are state contracts, so they're kind of their rate structure is
benchmarked.
built around
Is
that.
it?
Okay.
so.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
This
I
is-
think-
But
Sorry, I
can
mean,
always ask.
so my feeling was that, because somebody asked me about this earlier today, and I was thinking, you know, how do we justify this? Yes, some of this equipment is not doing so well, and I know we've had some color issues and challenges with this, and the audio is always challenging, but I think there was a commitment for us to maybe be better at being able to support hybrid meetings if that's the direction that we go. So perhaps having this equipment will better position ourselves for that, and obviously, I think having that room wired would be helpful. I do question, you're planning on using one of these TVs to go in there?
Yes.
This one.
Is this one even operational anymore?
Yes, it's just on a different system than this one, so we don't run that one in this meeting.
I mean, this doesn't look particularly great, but if you guys feel that's gonna work,
Yeah, we've talked with the schools also. We may have some access to some surplus hardware that they have. That space, I mean, right now, the only place that we have to do any kind of teleconferencing or anything like that is this room.
Right.
So not only is this totally inappropriate for small group, but it takes it offline for public meetings. So we really will benefit by having some kind of a space in there for smaller, be it meetings, collaboration space, anything like that.
I guess my concern would be, if the owl dies at 2 in the afternoon, and there's a planning board meeting at night or a select board meeting at night, we have to cancel that meeting, right, if it's hybrid?
Or we have to see if we can borrow the school's owl, and if that owl is down. So we will keep this owl. This will go in the other room. We'll be able to use it. So it's kind of like a backup. It will be used as a backup.
The point is this, the process is risk mitigation too,
that's a
that,
good point.
Yeah.
It is getting old, the equipment.
and if it dies, you're stuck paying premium to get it fixed within a day as opposed to a state bid, which is convenient. Not that I'm saying how to vote, but just observing.
So we do have several questions online
Okay.
regarding this item.
Yep.
Would you like- So Diane Wood asks, would these upgrades also improve audio in the room for the attendees, so speakers in the room?
I can ask Matt if he's got any comments on that, but there's no amplified sound in this room. There's microphones that pick things up, so, Matt, do you have anything to add?
I believe that actually, excuse me, there is in the ceiling speakers already, and they are amplified, and I believe we're just not really utilizing them at the moment because of the way we do things. So I believe that capability will remain, if we go with this system.
Okay, and then the next two items are from James Kokis. Why can't this go out for bid? And the cost, it doesn't come with HW. I'm not quite sure what that means.
Hardware.
Hardware. So the cost inclusive is hardware as well, with the $87,692. And as explained before, because this vendor is on the state bid list. Their pricing is competitive and has been vetted through the state.
So I think I do want to go the whole list and then come back and discuss these one by one, so, okay, if that's all the
That's all
questions, go
from
to town
public,
hall
yep.
authorization.
So Mike, Town Hall building weatherization match.
Yes, so I think we mentioned this in an earlier conversation, but we've been working with National Grid and Guardian Energy Management, one of their project expediters, to scope out weatherization projects, basically out of the IGA, on what started as 10 buildings, now is looking like 11 based on our capital project meetings that we've been having with the Capital Planning Committee. We're still in the final stages of fine-tuning that scope, but this is another one of these series of projects that we're looking to really maximize some promotional incentives. What my hope is that we wind up with about 75% of the total project cost covered by incentives, and have a payback period under 5 years on all of them. This portion, the $50,000 we're asking for, is the town portion of the town buildings. The school has their portion set aside with money that we were able to free up from the lighting project that wound up being covered 100%.
So with the agenda saying Town Hall, it's actually town buildings, correct?
Town buildings, correct, yes. And really, if we do them all, but which we don't know that we will do them all, but if we do them all, this will basically knock all the weatherization projects out from the IGA.
Okay, any other questions coming from that one?
No, the question from the previous one. So we can go back to that at the end if you
Okay.
want. And then the last one is item F, so Wi-Fi for Westford Academy Gymnasium to aid in town meetings in the amount of $30,000. So this has been a conversation for several years now about the capability of the Wi-Fi system in the gymnasium being very weak and not being able to handle the capacity of over 800 people in that gymnasium. We saw at the town meeting that we had about 666 voters and then staff in that room. We did not utilize the PAC or the cafeteria or the auxiliary gym. The cost to wire up those 4 spaces together would be almost $120,000. So we pared this down just for the gymnasium, as we feel that this would be the primary space for town meeting, except if we see an extraordinary size town meeting like we've had in the past.
And this is not necessarily directly in support of the meeting. This is so people who are in the room have access to Wi-Fi if they're worried about childcare, if they're worried about being accessed. We're concerned there's some barrier to attending because people are totally in a dead zone. If they're
Well,
in
it's to act.
twofold.
Go ahead.
I think it's both that, and then it's also, people who are in the room and, can't see the screen and want to be able to access the motions on their, tablet or iPhone or whatever they have. So I think it serves 2 purposes.
How do we keep them from streaming Netflix, though, while we're doing the meeting?
I don't know, okay?
Could you ask a question from the board? Okay, Wendy?
Wendy Gloyd, 16 Pleasant Street. Commission on Disability is also interested in this, as we have a section in the gym for folks that may need assistance, and they are able to stream on tablets to get the
Captioning.
closed captioning and things like that. Also, if they need hearing assistance through Bluetooth, that can help as well.
I did have a serious question. Is Kevin on the line, or who do we have from IT?
So we have Matt Emanuel from IT. If he can't answer, we can certainly get you back.
So
a
my question was, so if we improve the capability of the Wi-Fi, it's all that traffic's got to go to some switch somewhere before it exits out into our fiber. Does any of that other hardware behind the Wi-Fi access points need to be upgraded to accommodate 600, 800 people browsing on the internet? Has anybody thought about that?
Matt, are you able to answer that question, or should we get that back to Kevin?
He can probably answer it a little bit better. To my knowledge, I believe he has recently replaced a lot of the switchgear in Westford Academy, so I believe what's there should be suitable for what we're about to do with this.
Okay, as
But
long
we
as
can-
somebody's looked at
we
that,
can get
I'm
more information, yeah.
comfortable. Thank you.
We may have upgrades part of the school safety task force to improve throughput if we had a bunch of folks calling for help at once.
Okay.
So that maybe be
Great. Thank you.
Should also save on paper.
It's true.
Okay, so we have one more question.
Just from James Kokos again on item A, the town hall meeting room. Does the state contract restrict your ability to go out for bid? It does not. It's just if there is a vendor on state contract, we have the ability to expedite the bidding and I wouldn't say bidding, expedite the process and just go with a state certified bidder.
And just for fair play, either the police or fire chief on for any updates of the?
They are not
Okay.
this evening, no.
They don't have to be, just if they wanted to add anything. So, what is the,
I'll move to approve all of them.
well, we can't, because E is gonna both with the budget, so we,
Oh, okay, no, I'll move to approve A, B, C, D, and F.
and then the remainder to go to E?
Yes.
I guess just one question on that. So I'll second that, but before, just, are we at the end of the time window?
Yeah, I was gonna say, are
So-
we at the absolute end, or?
So we need to have contracts signed by December 31st.
Okay.
So you have a meeting on November 26th, you have a meeting on December 10th, and a tentative meeting on December 17th. So with the health insurance trust, it would go to pay any bills that are outstanding related to health insurance before December 31st. If you want to hold this open one more meeting just to see if there's any final takers, I believe that we can do that, Dan, correct?
Just to give you flexibility, in case something comes up. So there may be other closeouts too that could be
Yeah, I was
included in
thinking
that,
that
so.
there might be some
yeah.
other closeouts, so I
So
guess
maybe
I
we hold off on E.
I would approve, move to approve A, B, C, D, and F, and hold E for maybe one more meeting.
And I guess that, back to the question from the resident, how fast, I mean, if we had to go, if we went out to bid, we had to put out an RFP, correct? And then,
It would be an invitation for bid with that amount, so it'd probably take a month or so to get
Yeah,
back quotes.
Be about a month.
So we'd
start to
probably be
finish.
right up against
yeah,
the deadline.
which I guess sort of goes to the idea of using the state bid, because we don't want to throw money away. if
Yeah,
we-
the state basically already went through the competitive process, so that's why we're able to kind of piggyback on the tail end of it. So this is a competitively sourced procurement.
Okay, so we have a motion from Andrea to approve town hall meeting rooms for 87,692, town building weatherization for 50,000, fire department overtime for 75,000, hybrid cruiser for the police department 58,483, and Wi-Fi for the WA gym at 30. Is there a second? Tom, a second? Okay, so any last remarks? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
Jared.
Thank you.
Kristen, Mike, everybody. Next, we have a public hearing on the classification of real and personal property tax. So welcome back for your annual visit. Well,
Welcome, Will.
you can come more often if you want to, but
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, board members. My name's Will Nacer. I'm the Chief Assessor for the town, and I'm here tonight to present the annual tax classification hearing.
You open the public.
oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Oh, that's
That's
right,
the clerk's
it's a
job.
public
Come on,
hearing.
Chris. Yes, we need
My
to,
bad.
well, we need to open the,
Chair, we need to open this public hearing. What do I have
Move
to
to
say?
open the public
Move
hearing.
to open the public hearing.
is there a second? All in favor?
Aye, and I have to remember to close it. Thank you. All right.
Thank you,
On
Kristen.
top of it.
Sorry, Will.
Learning on the job.
Okay. Do we have the PowerPoint? So the tax classification hearing is a little bit of a misnomer because we're actually, it's an annual adoption of the residential factor. So I don't know where that came about because we're not really classifying anything in the process, but that's, we call it the tax classification hearing. Okay. So the Board of Assessors, unfortunately, none of them could be here tonight, but we did have a meeting today and did go over this, and they gave me some comments about it. So this year is fiscal year 2025. It's an interim year. So the assessment date for all real and personal property is January 1st of 2024, and that's why we go back in time. If we're valuing something on a specific date, and you have to go back in time. So all of the residential values, we look at sales from calendar year 2023, and commercial industrial values, we do the same thing. We're looking at information from 2023, and the personal property values are cost tables and written returns from that same year. Occasionally, we'll have to go forward into 24 if we don't have enough information. This slide just is the macro view of the town. So left to right is the property class. We have five classes of property: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal property. In Westford, we only use 4 classes: residential, commercial, industrial, and personal. The next 2 columns are last year's information. So we had about $6.7 billion in value. We've eclipsed the 7 billion. The next 2 columns are fiscal 25. So all the way to the right, the percentage change from year to year is an upward change, percentage change of 6.2% for residential, and just a marginal change for commercial. 1.9 for industrial, and personal went down. So your overall grouping of commercial, industrial, personal went down. The overall for the town is a positive 5.5%. It was suggested I put information about exempt properties, and these are the largest owners of exempt properties, so these are non-taxable. It's just an informational view of where the value is for non-taxable. So that's not the full list, but we almost have about 500 million in non-taxable within the
If I
town.
can ask, so do all of these have a pilot, or do some of them have a pilot?
No, none of them do. So these are,
MIT had a pilot.
MIT does not have a pilot.
I thought the Housing Authority used to have a pilot. Did that go away?
The Westford Solar has a pilot. You know, Westford Solar 1 and Westford Solar 2, as far as I know.
MIT makes a donation each year. It's not technically a pilot.
Okay, I knew that they did something.
Thanks. Those who are listening, a pilot is payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
One of those 5-letter acronyms that we throw around.
Jumping back to the taxables, so our fiscal 2025 summary is the residential class increased by 6.2%. We have about 6,500 single-family homes, and that's a total of about a little over 8,600 in total parcels in the residential area. Quite a few residential condominiums, 1,478. The commercial class stayed about the same. We have 264 parcels, industrial 113, and the personal property class 208 accounts. Some of the trends and comments for the classes of property. So the single family increased by about 32 count, and that's for various developments off of Route 40, if you're familiar with that, and a couple smaller residential condominium complexes is the increase. The commercial decreased by 1, industrial increased by 2, and they're related, that those two parcels, or they're 2 classes. In personal property, we have 2 different areas. We have state valued and locally valued. It's our smallest segment of value, but there are some big accounts there, such as Verizon, Tennessee Pipeline, and the rest of the rest of the value is from your restaurants, local retail, gas stations, and so forth. This is a slide that I put in each year. It just shows the current year and the previous 9 years of how we've climbed in terms of value and what's gone on. So it wasn't that long ago that we were only at 4.3 billion, and now we're over 7 billion. So it's a significant growth in value. It's also noted at the bottom there, next year is a certification year for us. So that's the simplest way to put it. It's more of an audit for the assessing department, where we have to produce a lot of information for the state, and they look at our processes, and they look at different reports. We have to produce about 22 different reports, whereas an interim year, we do about 6 reports. So it's a lot more information. We produce maps. Sometimes they come to the town and they'll drive around and make comments to us and recommendations. But we'll start to do that process starting really in December of this current year. So the culmination of the personal and the real property is the tax levy. So we take the value and convert it to tax. So the tax levy is the dollar amount a community raises through real and personal property taxes each fiscal year. The tax levy is the largest revenue source for most communities that fund their town budget. And the estimate this year is $94,694,907. I know that's an estimate and it's exact, but I'm saying estimate because it could change slightly when we do the recap. We also add on new growth when we do our Proposition 2.5 calculation, which you'll see in just a slide or two. So new growth is new construction that occurs throughout the town. It's anything that's not previously assessed. So we add this amount, we take the value, we multiply it by last year's tax rate, and we come up with a dollar amount, and it's part of the calculation of growing the town's tax base. So the new growth value for this year was $49,677,719. So again, you take that number, multiply it by last year's tax rate of $13.77. You come up with $684,000. So that's our new growth for fiscal '25. The next slide is just a little history on the new growth. So the top part above the red line is the breakdown of residential versus commercial and industrial personal. And the totals multiplied across give us the $684,000. The previous years, I totaled up 5 years, just look at a 5-year average, excluding this year, so that's 24, or 19 through 24. So we are lower in our growth revenue for this year than the average has been for the past 5 years. So we'll see. We have some projects in the pipeline. We'll see what the new growth comes in for next year. Enhanced this a little bit and went back and looked at new growth for 16 previous years as well. So that's 2005 through 2020. So a 16-year average of that time frame is we're averaging about $1 million new growth when we talk about dollar amounts. Again, we're below that, but and I didn't have time to research all the different projects and why we had blips like 2014, and maybe someone that was here would know better than I would what projects went on 2014 and 2015. You had some pretty good growth there.
The Cornerstone, wouldn't
I
it?
was gonna say, I think it's Cornerstone.
Cornerstone, yeah. This slide is a more granular look at the new growth, and what you're looking at is where does the new growth come from. So if you look at it, the first 4 lines are residential. So the single families are definitely our biggest grower of new growth, where we have almost 29 million in new growth there. Residential condominiums, there's other residential that adds to it. New lots that are cut up and divided, that adds to the new growth as well. We're able to take that. And there is some commercial industrial when there's say a retrofit of a commercial building. We are able to grab some new growth there. The personal property, those are assets that are added to, say, Verizon puts in a new switching station, or conduits or something like that, poles. That's all part of the personal property new growth. So this is the tax levy rendering. It's where we do the actual Proposition 2.5 calculation. So you're taking the levy limit from last year, you're adding any amended new growth, which we didn't have any, and you're multiplying that by 2.5%, adding the new growth amount, which I just discussed. You would add an override if we had that. We don't, and so you add the debt exclusion. So you come up with the levy for fiscal 25 is 95,744,906. So the projection to run the town is about it's 140 million. So that's what we start with. What does it take? What's it take to run the town? Then the finance director comes up with the amount of money, 44 million, and then the gap amount is where I come in, and that's where it fills in the blank. So that's how it works, rather than we don't jump in first. It's what's left over. That's how that works. So we work all year, and we refine the values. We get approved values. We're converting the value to tax. That's our purpose, is come up with tax dollars. So we submit and receive approvals from the state, from the Division of Local Services. We work with Dan, the finance director, Jesse, the accountant, and Christine, our treasurer collector, and complete the recap documents. And then we hold the hearing, which we're doing tonight, and you'll choose, you'll at least make one choice tonight, and that'll be the residential factor. And then once your choices are made, I submit that to the state, and they approve a tax rate for us. So the development of the tax rate would be to establish the property values, which I've already stated. We're at 7.1 billion. So that's an approved final numbers for the values. Step 2, we take the value, or we take the levy amount and divide it by the value. It's very simple. It's just a math equation. And that's a fraction, comes up to 0.01347, or $13.47 per thousand in value. If you notice at the bottom of the slide, I did put the average value of a single-family home for this year, and what the real estate tax amount would be, $10,730, and again, that's without the CPA. I did add this slide in, so it's just some various value amounts, whether it's a residential condo or it's a single family or a commercial building, anywhere from $350,000 in value up to $1.25 million. You can go from left to right across and see the tax amount. So your average residential condominium would be paying about $7,500 in total charges, and your average single family would be paying over just slightly over $11,000 in real estate taxes. Also, we wanted to note the tax billing. If people aren't familiar with the tax billing, we are a quarterly based system, so Your first two tax bills are based on last year. It's an estimate. And then we do our thing tonight, and we get approvals. And then what you've paid in is kind of a credit, and then your third and fourth, your tax bill, your third quarter tax bill will show your final value, the approved tax rate, and then the two amounts split evenly for the third and fourth quarter. This is a typical slide I have showing the single-family value, the tax bill and percentage increases from the previous year. So if you, the 2025 is the highlighted in yellow. Again, it's the same information that I've had in the previous slide. The tax dollar change from the previous year is a little over $300. And then worth noting at the very bottom, if you look at the average from 2016 to 2025, so it's about a $300 increase each year is what would have been about a little over 3.5% change. And this is, again, talking about the tax bill amount. Value, you could see, we saw 10, 12, 14% changes. But again, the tax bill itself hasn't changed too dramatically. So continuing with development of the tax rate, we determined, I've shown you a single rate, and you have a choice to do a single rate or a split tax rate. So the way the system works is something called a residential factor. That residential factor, as it decreases, that's where you get the tax rate split. If you choose a factor of 1, it's a single rate for everybody. Everybody gets the same tax rate. Doesn't get the same tax bill, but they get the same tax rate. And the second bullet point talks about the commercial industrial taxpayers. There is a mechanism that says that they can only pay 150% of the full fair cash value. In some towns, that can be higher, depending on the value amounts of the residential and the CIP levels. The next one is step 4. I just put in here what was chosen last year. So residential factor of 1. The natural breakdown of the shares last year was 89.7%, CIP of 10%, and last year's tax rate was $13.77. And if we go to the next slide, if you could, Mike. This is, the top line is a single rate of $13.47, and then the other lines below that are 10% increases or a shift of 10%. So a shift of 10% would yield a residential rate of $13.33, $14.82. And then if you were to go to a maximum shift, would be $12.76 for the residential and $20.21 for the commercial, industrial, personal. If you look at the very top line and the residential share and the CIP share amounts, so we're over 90% in terms of the valuation of the residential and less than 10% on commercial, industrial, personal. So that is a significant amount, and it's only increased, as you can see, over the years, how much residential value has gone up. So it's good to own property in Westford. It's just that the residential far outpaces any of the commercial, industrial. So the last part of this is our step 6, and we can have a discussion on whether you want to do a single rate or split tax rate. There's other community options, and I think I did a presentation in the springtime about the residential exemption. The small commercial exemption, which Westford did have for a number of years, It's a small commercial business exemption. It's an option that can reduce the tax burden for qualified small businesses up to 10%. The residential exemption reduces the tax burden for domicile property owners, that's people that have their primary residence in Westford. So all of Summer Village would not benefit from the residential exemption, go the other way. It adds more tax burden to other residential properties, and you can go up to 35% on that. The open space discount is not used by too many communities because of Chapter 61, 61A, and 61B, which is more beneficial, but it is an option to have that. And the protocol that happens would be, you can discuss this, and by a majority vote, you make your choices, and then I would, after tonight, I would submit that, or the town clerk would confirm the meeting and the voting, and then I would submit that to the state for approval. And I'm happy to, and I do have the last, if you want to flip to the last slide. So I did want to put down, I didn't put all the information about tax relief, but we have a number of different programs. They're on our website. The best way, rather than to get into all of them in a discussion, is probably have individuals call us, and we're happy to see people in person, or they can call and get information from us about if they qualify for any of the tax programs. With all that being said, it's a lot of information. I'm happy to take any questions.
Far away. Chris?
Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that we used to have a small commercial exemption. When did that cease, and do you happen to know why?
I came here in fiscal '22, and I want to say fiscal '19 was the last year. It was 5 years, so maybe fiscal 2014 through 2019. It may have even been longer than that.
Yeah, Tom worked on that investigation, so he can answer it
There you go,
with
Tom. Put you on
great
the spot.
detail if you'd like.
Yeah, no, at any level of detail. It was, my recollection is that it was very seldom used, and it was very hard to keep track of. And so it was sort of a logistical concern that it wasn't really creating the value that people might expect that it would. So that was the reasoning at the time that we recommended to not continue it.
And for example, if you've got a strip mall with a bunch of small shops, those small shops pay rent to a landlord, and so they would not get a tax exemption because the tax goes to the landlord. So it's a very few people that actually have their own small business in an independent location. It's not as many people as you would think that would benefit.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Any other questions?
If members of the public are interested, the reason that that commission at the time, task force or committee at the time, recommended that we maintain a single rate is that in basically, if you reduce the disincentive goes to businesses in this lopsided leveraged way. So if you reduce each resident a small amount in order to make up the tax levy, you have to raise the commercial payer by a relatively much larger amount. So to give any kind of real relief to the residents, you were putting an extreme disproportional burden onto the CIP payers. So at the time, with an interest in maintaining a balanced community that was welcoming both the business and small business and residents, the committee recommended to maintain a single rate.
So I guess a question on valuation. So commercial property valuation, is part of that a function of the rent and the occupancy that that they have?
Yes. So the three traditional ways of valuing property would be on a commercial property, you would use an income approach. So you look at income and expenses and do a traditional income approach. You can also look at a cost approach and a sales approach. Those are your three traditional ways. So with ours, we have a very sophisticated software system, so we're able to run those two different ways, or three different ways actually, and then decide which method we want to use. Most things are run on cost.
So I mean, for example, if you wanted to increase the commercial share, we can make more land available for commercial development, or we could improve the utilization of our current commercial base. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to what's the value of the property. So if you're improving the properties, yes, the value is going to go up. If you have low vacancy, that increases the value. Higher vacancy obviously decreases the value.
Just like as we hire our economic development consultant, one of our goals is to improve get higher vacancy rates, because that by itself will drive us more revenue without any kind of change to our green footprint.
Right.
Any questions coming from the audience?
Nothing from the audience.
Okay. Anyone here? So I guess the question before us then is whether to adopt a single uniform tax rate or some variation thereof.
To adopt a single tax rate.
Second?
In favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great job.
Okay.
Oh,
Move to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Is there a second?
second.
All in favor? Next item on the agenda is a discussion of the pay-as-you-throw for solid waste disposal, and I believe Mike has a presentation on tap for us with lots and lots of research. Tom and I got a preview of that about 2 weeks ago, so.
I'm not gonna hit you with all of it now. I'll try and keep this relatively short, as soon as I can figure out how to get it on full screen mode here. Okay, so, like Scott said, we did do a preview of this when we had some preliminary data. But what we'd like to share with you today is really just an overview of some of the options that we found. So we just very recently closed the public survey that we had out for the last month. And as you know, we've been working for the last several months really to kind of put the picture together and figure out what our options are to consider any kind of either a pay-as-you-throw or any kind of a fee-based approach to our garbage utility service. So what I'm going to go through as quickly as I can and still get you the information is I think it's important that we kind of recap what our goals and objectives are in this. So we'll spend just a minute on that. Really do want to share the public input survey that the town did, and then also some data from the neighborhood survey that the Recycling Commission did. I think those are important pieces. Real quick recap of the Budget Task Force findings and why we're here now. Something that everybody's asked about, what are our other municipalities doing? We'll look both across the state and with our market basket communities from the Budget Task Force, our 22 comparable communities, and then go over some options with you. These aren't exhaustive. What we have tried to put together are some options that can be tweaked and modified once we get some more direction on which way the board would like to go. Really, before we put a huge amount of work into any one, we'd like to know what's off the table, what's still on the table, and then we can boil it down from there. And then we'll have some discussion. I'd like to get your feedback on everything as well. So, I think this is a really important thing to keep in mind as we look at everything. So these are kind of the objectives that we have in developing the recommendations that we would bring before you, but kind of different ways to look at a fee for service around a trash utility. So it's a revenue tool, but we're not really recommending that it be used as such. We believe, based on what we've seen, that it's very possible to treat this as equally as important to the other goals, which is as a waste reduction tool, as a tool to support the housing and the economic development goals that the town has, and as a way to improve service delivery. So when we tried to look at the different options that we had, we didn't just focus on revenue. We didn't just focus on waste reduction or any one of them. We tried to look at what kind of works with everything and gives us a good balanced approach and lets us get really the best bang for our buck. So we tried now to really, as much as we can, tie everything back to the strategic plan that we're still working on. But this really hits two of our outcome areas. One is really that fiscal component, being responsive, being responsible with the taxpayer money. A big piece that that I think has been hammered in the past that we don't need to spend a huge amount of time on is costs are simply outpacing our ability to raise revenue under Prop 2.5. One thing that's not mentioned a whole lot is right now the waste collection industry is kind of on the tail end of manual collection being a thing. We're moving more and more towards the need to have automated collection. So I think we would look now at any kind of a manual collection or a pay-as-you-throw option differently than we would have, say, 5 years ago, because we do need to plan on the expiration of that model. So that factors into really the way we're looking at this. The other big outcome area that we have through the strategic plan is the commitment to climate action and environmental sustainability. So we've got a clearly articulated goal in the climate roadmap to achieve zero waste by 2050. Big piece of that is going to be our reduction of overall tonnage, but also diversion. So as we look at different options, whatever gets chosen, we're also going to have to simultaneously be looking at those diversion opportunities to see what else we have. The other piece, and I think this is important both from a climate standpoint, but also equally as important to me from a customer service standpoint, if we can get to a more automated collection, we can run these routes much faster, more efficiently. We can reduce vehicle idling. We can reduce customer service issues. So that should be a big piece of what we're looking at as well. So we just closed on the 4th the fee option resident survey that we did, and I sent you in your packet and then gave you an updated version of it, a clean updated version of it this afternoon. Of really what's probably one of our more successful surveys we had. We had close to 1,300 individual responses. That was after removing all the duplication that might have been in there. And really what was interesting is from the day it opened until the day it closed, the percentages stayed basically the same. We saw very, very consistent responses from start to finish throughout the duration of the survey deployment while it was out. So I'll share just the key findings because I don't think we want to spend a huge amount of time on it. I would encourage you to look at the results. We've posted those to the website. People can take a look. Again, that strong response rate was impressive. We have 8,000 eligible households. We got 1,300 of them to respond to this. Like all of our surveys, I'll point out this is not a scientific survey. It's not random, it's self-select in, so there's a margin of error here that probably exceeds what you would see in a statistically valid survey. But it's good information all the same. We think we got a pretty representative sample of the town. A big piece, and this was important for me, because I think I mentioned in the past we've had a significant decrease in our tonnage with shifting to the new hauler. Residents indicated that hasn't made a lick of difference in how they treat their trash. They're still basically putting out what they put out before. The vast majority of them, so we're still looking for that extra 100 tons a month and trying to figure out what exactly is happening. So I thought that was an important question for us to ask, and I was glad to get that data. Other two big key takeaways when we start talking about carts. 64% of households in a typical week, not spring cleaning, not Christmas, not party weekend, graduation, easily can fit their trash in a 35-gallon cart. That actually stands up also when we start looking at aggregate data across the entire town and look at total households divided by, or excuse me, total tonnage divided by total households. That's about what we see there. It's actually a little bit less when we kind of put it on average, but this takes it more into a percent of household rather than averaging it out across all of them. 90% easily within a 65-gallon cart, and we got those numbers off of the bag count question that we asked. It was a little bit different when we asked people to look at a picture of a cart and say, standing next to a person, what does this fit? But not hugely different. We started talking about preferences around how people would prefer to pay if there were any kind of a fee implemented. Almost 2 to 1, the responses favored a volume-based approach. So I want to pay for what I throw away. I don't want to pay a set fee. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as we look at these options as we move forward. Also important, and this showed up in the comments in a big way also, is the majority of people would rather pay either next to nothing or nothing to keep a base level service in a 35-gallon cart and just buy overflow bags for the extras. So that's important, especially when we start looking at the comments, because there are an enormous number of people out there, seniors, single folks, empty nesters, that have a bag of garbage. And so that gets important when you start thinking about a per household fee and how you might approach that. We want to really take that data and think, how do we do something that doesn't hit most people in a fee, the people that are actually generating very little trash. And then lastly, when you do have that extra trash, and we don't have this now in a good way for our residents, what do you do with the extra on that off week when you have the graduation party? Again, vast majority of people preferred the option to buy an overflow bag rather than our current system, which is not very good at all, and that's a $15 sticker. Again, those are kind of the key points that we took away from it. I would definitely encourage you to look closely at the data, look at each one of the responses, to read the comments. There's some good comments in there, both for and strongly against doing anything different, so I think all of them are worth listening. Before I move on, since you have had a chance to look at the survey results, does anybody have any questions or comments on the survey results specifically? All right. So the other survey piece that we did, and I think they actually had a good time doing this, was the Recycling Commission went and did basically, I called it a windshield survey. I didn't realize they were all walking, so really a sunglass survey. Went around and looked at houses, and they did over the course of about a week, I think it probably went a little bit longer than that, looked at 945 houses across the town. This was a little, the data lines up with what we have in the survey, but because they're not popping the lids on cans, their goal was really just to look at container types and use their best guess of the volume that container type had. So we have no idea if these were full, we had no idea if they were empty, had a soda can in them, whatever. But again, what we found is the interesting piece is really on the right side when we start looking at those larger generator households, the 96 gallon and above. It's a relatively small portion of the population, and that bared out also when we started looking at the actual select and survey results. There's not many people who put out that massive amount of garbage. It's just a handful. So that was the survey that they did. There is some additional data that we have from them that we'll share in another report that we can push out. So kind of taking us back to a few years back when the Budget Task Force came up with its recommendations, I just wanted to show that they had. So most of these still largely stand in terms of the data. The one thing I would point out is as we've worked with Will in the assessor's office, we do have some discrepancies among the original data that was used in terms of the household numbers. So those have been refined. We have literally gone through every single parcel in town to get a very comprehensive and accurate list of eligible households, and the number went up by around 500 households. So Westford is not doing as bad as we would have thought in terms of our comparison with the average. We basically are sitting a little bit above average if we adjust the current data for that number. Now we're still higher than a lot of other communities, certainly, but this kind of fits into the way that we want to look at everything, is just making sure we have the most accurate data we possibly can get. But most of the remaining stats here are still very, very accurate and timely even today after several years since this was done. So what are other municipalities doing? And there's two sources we have off this. Mass DEP puts together a Muni Data survey. They do this every year. Latest year we have is calendar 2023. Because of last year just happened to be a year that a ton of municipalities' contracts switched over, so there have been a number of changes for fiscal 25 and on. But starting with the 2023 data, we've got 45 municipalities that are doing some kind of a pay-as-you-throw or a smart system. Ooh, and I have that. Yep. across the state, and you can see just kind of looking at the average tonnage that they generate, significantly less than Westford, and then any community that has not somehow monetized their trash disposal and made it a variable rate program. 120 municipalities charge a fee for curbside trash collection across the state. So that's good information to know. The average fee, $283 across all. And these are just on our curbside programs, not transfer station or private haulers. So we also looked at just the market basket communities, the ones that are included in the budget task force that we like to benchmark against. And this was actually the Westford Recycling Commission gave us a hand with this and called them all to get their new up-to-date data. And it's changed a bit since what we see in that 2023. But out of those 22 towns, you've got 18 that have curbside collection. 17 of them have a standardized cart, and you can see the numbers on the sizes right there. What's interesting, and well, it's obvious, but what you should know is as those cart sizes go down, their tons per household go down as well. So that's something to keep in mind, that, you know, if we are sticking with waste reduction being a goal, and it's not just being about revenue or cost containment, that's an important thing to note. 3, in addition to other programs, charge an annual fee of some type. Almost $300 with the towns that we have right around us and that we compare ourselves to. 12 of them have a program that has overflow bags. That's basically all of the 35, the 48-gallon town, and about half of the 64, 65-gallon towns do that overflow bag, or some kind of a sticker or other fee for overflow waste above a maximum cart allowance. Some of them do additional cart fees. All of the ones that do any kind of additional cart fee or have any kind of complex system, all of them have dedicated trash personnel that do the administration. So that's something to keep in mind also, is the more complex we get, the more staff it's going to take to administer it. Anything other than the simplest of systems is going to require staff hours. So this is where we're at tonnage-wise, the first 3 months of the year so far. I do have the October numbers. I'm actually in the process of reviewing those. It was a little bit different than what we had in the prior months, but we've uncovered some irregularities. Looks like we got some extra trucks showing up on our stuff, so we're working through that with the vendor to make sure we're only getting charged for our stuff. But so far, what we're seeing is a continued drop, but we want to have as many months as possible of that, make sure it's accurate before we try to build any projections off this. We're using the projections as we move forward in any kind of modeling around pay-as-you-throw or any other fee bases, based on what we're projecting for the budget, which is roughly 1/4 of the % change we're seeing in our actual tonnage. So we're still being very conservative and trying to not set ourselves up for some kind of unknown. So the other big piece, and this was, Will got out of here lucky. He has spent an enormous amount of time looking at our eligible households, going through absolutely every single parcel that we had, and seeing exactly how we got to the numbers that we did. Looking at our previous policies, looking at multifamily, building a really good database of everything, and actually to the point that we're probably going to make some database changes that let us run some of this stuff automatically moving forward. But anything we do, if it's any kind of a cart-based system or anything like that, we're going to have that as kind of our master address list moving forward. The other thing that we did in making our adjustments is we are really only looking at those residential curbside customers for any kind of a fee or a pay-as-you-throw, assuming that even if we do continue to service the housing authority properties that are out there, that they would not be on any kind of a pay-as-you-throw basis. It's virtually impossible to do that in a multifamily setting of more than 4 units. And then we've also got a handful of other nonprofits that just kind of made it into our collection routine over the last several years and haven't gotten out. So talk a little bit more about those as we move on. But You know, another thing to keep in mind with, especially after following Will's presentation that he just did a minute ago, by getting this eligible household list really well dialed in, if we do have any kind of a cart type system or any address specific fee structure, that does give us an opportunity to kind of go back and look at the designation of those properties. If we have ADUs that are getting 2 carts, for example, make sure we have our tax base accurate. So there's an opportunity to do some cleanup if we look at any kind of a cart-based system down the road. So that's just a breakdown of the different types, and you'll see again, you know, when we previously reported our data for that Mass DEP, we were sitting right around 7,500 households, so you can see what the numbers are there. So this is just looking at what our projections are, and because what we're trying to get dialed into, if we start looking at just the residential curbside component, we really have to figure out, all right, how are we backing out our municipal disposal, how are we backing out our schools, how are we backing out that housing authority, because that's not going to be part of any fee-based or pay-as-you-throw type structure. So when we pull all those things out and we just look at the residential piece, we get down to a per household average of about 0.74 tons. And you can see the corresponding pounds there. And, you know, there's a couple of different ways to look at what that translates into, but our best guess is that results in essentially a household on a normal weekly basis generating about a 35-gallon cart worth of waste, which is, just happens to be, lines up perfectly with our survey results, lines up very well with what we see from state data, that in general, our numbers seem to support that 35-gallon cart gets most people most of the time. 65-gallon cart, obviously significantly higher capacity. This is one of the concerns that you have with moving to larger carts that aren't fully utilized now, is that they'll throw to fill the cart, and that you actually may wind up seeing some of those numbers go up a little bit. So now we get into our options, and before I kind of take that step, any questions on anything so far? Everybody good? All right, so the options that we really looked at based on guidance that we had in the past were to look at just a set fee per household. And so we'll talk about pros and cons of that. You could do, you know, any number of tweaks among that, whether we had carts associated with that, no change to containers, etc. Number 2 is looking at just a straight traditional pay-as-you-throw program. 100% bag-based. Programs like that could be with or without carts. There are some options there. I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail, but not exhaustively yet. And 3 is looking at some kind of a hybrid or a variable rate program that basically starts us at a bin and then looks at overflow bags on top of that. So, you know, it still is really a pay-as-you-throw or a smart program. Again, all kinds of variations or different ways that we could approach that, whether you did it with a 35-gallon cart, a 65-gallon cart, as much as I wouldn't want to ever consider this, multiple cart options, different sizes, just because the administrative burden that would come with that. But we'll talk about each one of these options in a little bit more detail. Number 1 being the per household fee. I'll let you guys read this at another time at your leisure and think about it. I'll point out really, you know, what I think are probably the most relevant pro and con. Pro, you get a basically no added real enforcement burden. It's relatively simple to administer, other than from the back of the house piece where we have to figure out how to invoice it and how to bill it and collect it. The biggest single con to this, there's absolutely no incentive to reduce waste if we don't have something based on the volume that a household disposes of. We did just kind of model some different real simple ways to look at what a fee would look like based on different targets. Essentially looked at you know, a $25 a year fee all the way up to a $283 a year fee, which is the average across the state. To fully recover our costs, we'd have to have a fee of $334 per year. That would basically be the full cost to cover all trash and recycling services in the town. Obviously, that's a little further than we want to go with it, but it does give you a good idea about how many households this would deal with. What this also doesn't contemplate is how we would treat the housing authority properties. They're not kept in that eligible household list. So that would have to be something for further discussion. This doesn't include any additional program costs. We would have to administer something like this. We would certainly have at least some staff hours in the treasurer collector office, in the accounting side, to figure out, how do we bill for this? How do we invoice? There may be software costs associated with that if the Munis module is not capable of doing that. So option 2 is to do what you think of when you think of a pay-as-you-throw program, which is just to go with bags. Biggest plus with this is probably the most proven way to reduce waste, and it is a revenue generator, no doubt about it. In my view, one of the biggest cons is the industry is moving away from this, and I think we need to be careful about jumping into anything where the technology is going to be changing and the collection models are going to be changing. Most of the collectors now are charging $1 a bag or more to collect these things. That adds in obvious questions around, how do you audit something like that? How do you enforce something like that? How do you make sure your vendor is adhering to a contract? All those things mean you need more staff. We don't necessarily want to take a route like that. So that is one of the big cons of a bag program, is the industry is moving away from it. So certainly something to think about, but no doubt about it, this has proven time and time again to significantly reduce waste. I won't bore you with every number here, but all the studies, all the data we've seen shows anywhere from a 20 to a 40% reduction in waste, plus the corresponding revenue that you get with it. So we will send you some additional information on this specifically. This is generated by a vendor, not me. So until I've modeled all this stuff myself, I won't stand behind any of the numbers, but I can share with you what the vendor has put together, which we're not going to be too far off if we model it as well, but they might be a little bit more aggressive than I would be comfortable being. So that's another, just kind of looking at the different revenues and the different bag prices and the impact they would have on the revenue, and then their estimation of tonnage reductions. Again, in our look at this, we have not really modeled much in the way of tonnage reduction. I want to know what's happening now, because I actually think that based on the data, based on the adjusted household numbers, we're not too bad in town. We've got progress to make, but we're not awful. So it will go down with a pay-as-you-throw. I don't know that it's going to go down to the extent that they project it goes down. So we'd be a little bit more conservative with our numbers as we looked at this, just to keep ourselves out of trouble. So this gets us into those hybrid options. This is, we'll call it option 3A. This is our 35-gallon cart with an overflow bag. The way that we have modeled this and projected it, we would essentially be recommending a 35-gallon cart be covered within the levy, and this is kind of your base service that every household gets without paying another dime. The grants would cover the vast majority of the startup costs for this. We believe if our trends continue on tipping fees, that we can absorb the rest in the current budget. So this would be relatively cost neutral. I don't know exactly how tipping is going to turn out for the year, so there may be something minor. Plus, we'd have to talk about, would we throw incentive bags in, for example, throw a sleeve of bags with every cart, et cetera. But this is the option that meets the majority of needs for 64% of our residents. My projections on this show us basically as not really reducing any waste, but essentially trying to capture the excess waste in the revenue and just that piece, letting the levy cover that 35 gallons per household every week, no additional charge. You have over, you're into a bag situation. And the bags, I'll show you on the next page. Well, so this is kind of who would fit into this. So it gives you just an idea about the different family types. So those first two rows, those are your people that are going to fit within a 35-gallon cart on most weeks. When we start looking at how this models out financially, we'd be looking at, it's a little tricky to use different estimates that are out there as far as how much each one of these bags hold, but following those baseline assumptions, depending on whose number you want to start with for what a bag holds, we'd be looking at needing about 220,000 to 167,000 bags per year. And you would really only, that's your revenue generator right there, and it's just covering the excess waste, so the stuff that's over that 35 gallon per household. With the bag cost, with an initial outlay for the bags, a bag fee to fully recover the disposal of that waste, and the program cost would run from about $1.50 to $2. So that $1.38 to $1.82, depending upon kind of how stuffed we thought those bags would get. So a variation on this would be looking at a 65-gallon cart, which is the cart that seems to meet just about everybody's need. The vendors have kind of all called this in trash terms, apparently the sweet spot for cart size for trash. I'll say, big con on this one is there's really no grant funding available for this. This would have a significant outlay for the town to go into any kind of a standardized cart other than a 35-gallon container. The only option I really see as viable for going a direction like this is to have the vendor own and maintain the carts and charge us an annual fee, which we would then amortize out to the town, either as just part of the levy, which would require funds, or as an annual fee. So this would be something that would most likely require a fee if we were to look at a standardized cart. Again, biggest pro, covers just about everybody. Biggest con, more than likely this isn't going to do anything to reduce waste for anybody. Most households are going to have to struggle to fill that container. They're already disposing of significantly less than that, and studies have shown over and over again, you give folks a bigger container, they're going to put garbage in it. So that's a big con, is it really doesn't get us to any kind of waste reduction goals. So a couple other considerations just before we kind of wrap up and start taking some discussion. Some things have been discussed in the past, both in the Recycling Commission and also internally. If waste reduction and the climate roadmap goals are things that we want to pursue and the board wants to pursue, they could consider looking at policy changes for ineligible properties. And this is something that a lot of towns do have, where they mandate recycling for businesses and residents, multifamily in particular, that do not participate in a town program. That is certainly something that the town could consider. It does get us towards some of the climate goals that you have. It has absolutely no impact on what we would recommend around a pay-as-you-throw program, but it does meet some of the other goals of the board and of the community. The other thing is, we've got to know, are we going to enforce the board's policy on multifamily, and how are we going to deal with the 200 plus units that we're currently covering that do not pay any tax to support this system and are effectively subsidized by taxpayers. That's just right out of the gate a savings in our bill of about $25,000 a year addressing those. So don't need any decision on that today, but just things that we need to be thinking about moving forward. So, any questions so far before I kind of throw you some questions for you and some things that we need in terms of guidance? Ann.
Yes.
So you say, well, the survey data that you collected suggests that 64% of households on a typical week could fit their trash in a 35-gallon cart, right? You've used this 35-gallon cart numerous times in the presentation. But the neighborhood survey done by the Recycling Commission seems to indicate, maybe I'm reading the numbers wrong, that only 27% of the households they looked at used a 32 or smaller gallon container. So that would suggest that in reality, people are actually using much bigger containers than 35 gallons. Yes, maybe they're not filling them, but they're using them.
Yes.
So how do you reconcile those two pieces of information?
Well, it's tough to reconcile because, one, they didn't they didn't go and lift lids. And they used their best judgment in terms of the size. I actually kind of ignored the smaller stuff and focused on the bigger stuff. Where do we see absolutely a 95-gallon container or larger not fit in the bill for most families? And I can't really assign a whole lot of statistical and scientific validity to those lower numbers because of the potential for excess capacity in those, but I can when I see multiple 95-gallon containers, 126 gallons worth of containers, and bags out in front of the house. And those numbers were consistent with what we saw on the survey. But I got no good answer for that piece of it. I think the better piece of data we get is from people themselves reporting what they put in those bins that the Recycling Commission didn't look at.
As another possible option, you stated that bags have a disadvantage of, not being able to fully automate the collection. So is there another mechanism outside of, a larger container that would allow to deal with overflow? Is there a possibility, like if you're a family with 6 kids or whatever, and you need more bags or you need more than 35, can we give them 2 35-gallon containers? Consider something that's manageable somehow, that people can use those some weeks but not other weeks?
Well, I mean, we can do anything. It's a question of if that's what the board wants us to look at, and we can kind of focus our analytical efforts towards what does it look like for a system that maybe has multiple carts per household. The enforcement becomes a little bit tricky, so we'd have to really understand what does that mean for enforcement. I don't think any option is off the table. I think, as long as we're sticking with those key principles and objectives we put in those first slides, does the board believe in the idea of let's find something where the base doesn't cost anybody anything and they're paying for the extra? If that's what we want, then we can look at different cart sizes, for example, or extra carts or extra bags. So I think there's no limit to what we can do if we resource the program properly.
Judge,
Yeah, what are we paying per year for the trash pickup right now?
The pickup contracts, 1.735, I believe is the number. Maybe it's 1.8. Our total budget's about 2.6 for recycling, for trash, for everything.
And for tipping,
And for tipping.
that includes the whole package. Trash collection, recycling collection, and tipping fees.
We have our collection contract, and then we have a tipping component for recycling with a processing fee, and then a tipping component for solid waste.
So we're paying about $200 per household for that?
No, 334 was what you're asking, 334.
We backed out the municipal, the housing authority, and the schools
Okay.
from that number.
That's one of the things I read in that survey is they're people kind of flexible on some of the options. They don't want it to cost anymore. I mean, yeah. So, but the perception when this thing was first brought up years ago was that we were going to shift the burden. We were going to start charging a fee, then take that $1 million or whatever it was at the time and move it over to something else. So, the thing is, we kind of look at this as if we do change the source of the money, then I think we need to kind of identify how that's going to affect the rest of the budget or where that money's going to go. Because I think a lot of people are going to want to ask, if you hit me with a $300 fee per year, and then nothing else changes, then that's shifting the cost another $300 to the taxpayer, and the money that they're paying now for it goes somewhere else, goes off into the ether somewhere. So, I mean, when you approach this, I think that has to be explained, because I did look at that survey, and I looked at some of those things, and the consistent thing was, yeah, 35 gallon, that's fine, but there was always that underlying thing. I don't want it to cost me a whole lot more, if any, than what I'm paying now for it.
Well, I think, we need your guidance, we need your recommendation, but I think that's why you're not seeing from us a strong recommendation on a fee-based approach, or a straight per household fee. I don't think that, there's a reasonable solution in here where base service doesn't cost anybody anything, and people pay for when they're high generators. I don't want to hurt a senior citizen with a bag. You know, what's that one bag? Andrea?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm sort of following up on what you said and also what our goals were, which is, we're not looking at this as a major revenue source. But we are looking at it, or at least I personally am looking at it as, you know, how do we reduce our waste? You know, how do we attain our sustainability goals? I'm thinking and remembering Will's presentation, and it looks like, you know, the average tax bill is gonna go up about $300 a household in fiscal year '25. So I'm not in favor of tacking on another $300 fee on top of a $300 tax rate that, you know, people may be facing in fiscal year '25. I don't think is sustainable. No pun intended. So, you know, my sort of outlook, you know, as a pathway forward is, you know, how do we reduce our waste? How do we sort of maintain it as a way that is, you know, has the least fiscal impact upon our residents, but still recognizes that, yeah, if you have folks who are very high generators, that it seems to me only fair and equitable, they have to pay a little bit more. So I don't know that, you know, I leave it to you to figure out the detail of how to sort of meet what I'm seeing as my goals and objectives, but if it helps you, that's what my thinking is in terms of the goals and objectives, in terms of where we're going with our waste management.
So let me ask this, are these our goals?
Well, but I think one thing that your survey is picking up is just household size. So if you're looking at a 35-gallon respondent, that probably is a empty nester, a young household, retirees. If you're looking at 64, that probably is a family, quite possibly a multi-generational family in one home. And so I think it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit too simplistic to say that 2/3 of our population are happy with a 35-gallon cart, because I think that that's ignoring the fact that another 25% would not be happy with the cart. I guess one thing we could think about is, as a board, do we want to take off the table options 1 and 2? Because to me, 1 is highly aggressive, and number 2 is highly, I think,
The actual survey.
makes very little sense. So, I mean, would it make sense if we want to focus on the 3? And,
By household size.
Thank you. I
Couldn't keep track of all.
I can't keep track of them all, okay?
I mean, the question becomes one of, do we make it
No idea. My little
options for
pea
35
brains.
and 65, and then options of variations upon that theme, at least limits us in terms of selection. But Tom, you,
No, I was just gonna say, I would support that approach. I mean, I've been converted a little bit from my previous position in that I see the value of, for most residents, we may be looking for a behavior change, but the behavior change in support of our goal that they've voted on in town meeting and asked us to pursue, but generally not gonna be asking them to, you know, to transfer into a fee and to sort of directly transfer the expense. I like the fact that there's proven data that this has a track record of reducing waste, and so we're not speculating necessarily, you know, about something that might happen here. And I do think it's fair to put some cap on the runaway increase aspect of waste. And I think asking people who are, you know, excess generators to pay an additional fee so that we're not burdening every other family in town with, you know, sort of a subsidy of people who generate a lot of extra trash. I think that seems fair, and I think is fiscally smart just from a budgetary point of view.
And it may help change behavior too.
And I think it has a strong incentive. I think the reason that the evidence is that it does change behavior.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, so I guess I'm hearing what you're saying about trying to keep this equitable, but I guess I represent that
Family of four.
family of five,
Okay.
right? And I'm, it's, you know, my kids are older now, but I go back to the time when they were in diapers, and you're buying toys, and you buy a lot of crap for your kids, unfortunately. And yes, it would be great to change behavior, and it would be great to go back to companies and make them reduce packaging, and everybody should just buy less, right? But the reality is that young families do consume a lot, and this is, to me, we have to be, I think, aware of that burden. If they're not doing it out of spite or being malicious, they're not doing it because they just feel like, oh, I'm just going to buy more stuff. You have to, as the nature of raising young children. And these families are already facing incredible burdens financially, right? You know, whether it's going to schools or paying for after school care or all the other school fees that are related, and bus fees and band fees and athletic fees, and then, you know, daycare and after school care. You just name it, just keep adding on. So I just think whatever we decide on, we have to keep that in mind. And I don't know, you know, I don't want to overburden a senior who's only throwing away one bag a week, but I think we have to keep the other side of the pendulum in mind to some degree as well.
Just in reaction to that, I do think that there's some programming that could go along with this that I think we've seen from the Cycling Commission before to help people, give people ideas about composting, give people, that's not going to solve the problem for every young family with a lot of kids, but I think it does show, you know, a real intention to solve the problem, reach the goal of actually reducing waste. And you mentioned it already. I guess I understand it's an additional cost, but it's a real cost to the town, so who should bear that cost? Is it more fair to ask everybody who's a low generator to support the high generator? Or is it more fair to ask the high generator to, with some supports to help them, you know, find ways to reduce, pay for the extra cost that's a real cost that we're paying, and tipping fees, it's a real cost that we're paying?
But we do that now. I mean, everyone pays for the cost for educating kids whether you have them or not. Everyone pays for a fire department whether you use the ambulance or not. You pay for the police whether you get broken into or not. So I think there is a sense that a community does take care of each other to some minimum level, which includes the fact if you've got kids, you have a higher minimum level than if you don't.
I guess, so it's an excellent point. I think there's a little bit of a difference between the commitment to public education. I mean, people pay utility bills across a whole bunch of things. We've set up in this town from long tradition that we handle the trash utility in a certain way. But for every other utility you pay based on what you consume. I mean, that's the normal way. If you use more electricity, more gas, I mean, so I don't accept that there's a broadly held community covenant like there is with public education, like there is with first responders around trash.
I would disagree. That's okay.
Okay.
I mean, I see your point. Like, so if if you have a household that's full of kids, you're probably heating that house probably higher than you would if you're just a two-person family and
You're buying more food.
You're off at the office most of the day, and but I still think you've got the young families are facing a disproportionately high rate of cost that they have to live in this town. I don't think we need to subsidize them, but I don't think we should unduly burden them either. That's where, and again, I don't know what the right answer is. That's why I was asking, if two carts would work.
Can we back up one step? I mean, so, well, bikes does give us a range of options.
Right.
Our direction is to say we want to focus on these elements. Please give us more detail on these elements. So my feeling is, if we can say tonight, scrap one and or two options, focus on the third option, and give us some parameters around 35 and 65.
Yeah, and help us think about these trade-offs.
And then down the road, 2 months, whatever it is, we say a final decision, is one or the other. But, for tonight, I don't think it's a debate about cart size, as the function is cart the solution? And then where do we go from there in terms of structuring the cart size and how we handle overflow bags? And, maybe you do get, some variation on cart plus bags, and you decide that if you're, I don't know I mean, for example, if you're seniors with perhaps, or anyway with a health concern, I think, but Christian disabilities, if you've got somebody with adult diapers, they're going to have a need beyond it, but you could work through the town's social worker or someone to get an exemption, that, okay, we're gonna give you 10 free bags a year, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
there may be ways to work that around. I don't know how you do the family size, but there may be ways to say, we will have 35 plus bags, but if there are mechanisms to get you more bags without, paying per bag. But I've I've got, family in Portland, Maine, where they charge you, everything is a bag. And you go to the grocery store and you spend, $20 on groceries and $40 on bags because you have to buy the bags for the month. So I don't want to go down the road. Well, they charge like $4 a bag. It's different, but still, it's I don't like option 2 because it is that, I think it's also a messy way to pick up trash. You can throw them on the cart, but then if nothing says one person doesn't put a bunch of trash at the bottom and the pay to throw back on top, and you can't tell what they did. So I don't think option 2 is actually really all that viable. But what opinion?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, Mike, again, you've said that the waste hauler is trying to move away from bags, right?
I think the industry is
whole is
not
doing that.
necessarily moving away from bags. They are moving closer and closer to carts as the mandatory way to collect. Whether a bag is in that cart,
Okay,
that's
well,
where the system's,
when I
yeah.
say bag, I mean
Yeah.
a bag on the side of the
On the
road
side
with
of the
your
road,
cart,
yeah.
with your cart,
Yeah.
right? So how does that help future negotiations or cost recovery if we do a pay-as-you-throw that requires a bag and a cart? Are we gonna be able to go and say, hey, we can't fully automate now because now we've just instituted this, bag policy and
I don't think I think we have to accept that we're not going to be able to fully automate. I think if we accept that we're going to largely automate, that's a game changer just in and of itself, moving to a big chunk. Because the other thing that's happening is the technology is changing. We're starting to see AI being employed on trucks, using cameras to do, tell you what bag just got thrown in. That house automatically gets a fine or gets booted off the program or whatever. That was actually something that was pitched. It's too early of a technology for us, but a year or two down the road, who knows? I guess my point on the bags being, the industry is moving away from it. So if we're gonna go ahead and jump into something pay-as-you-throw or variable rate, we may as well not jump in on the dead technology or the dying technology.
Right, no, that was my
And get us
thought
away
is-
from
is-
something.
is we should-
Technology's gonna change.
Yeah, we should jump in thinking about the future and even if it's a sort of a transition,
right.
we need to have sort of the end goal in mind, which is that eventually
We wanna all be on carts.
we all want to be we want to be completely automated, and that's kind of, I think, where we need to be moving for whatever decision that we make.
Yes, agreed.
I want to get this wrapped up, so
So you were asking, so can we eliminate? So I could make a motion to eliminate 1 and 2. I don't know if that would
I
help
guess
you,
from Mike's
or-
I think it's enough to know that we're not interested in a fee,
Right.
that we're interested in what are our options on carts? And I can work with that. I think if you guys can kind of look back through that presentation, those goals that were at the front that we tried to articulate, if that's kind of what we want to drive this thing, that we've got this blend of, a customer service goal as a tool, reducing waste as a goal, all these things as equal goals that need to fit in there, we can come up with a more refined package that works around carts, and then bring something like that back to you. Honestly, the longer we wait without impacting the budget, the better, because I want to see more months of data come in on collection.
That was going to be my question to
I'm
you.
scared to
Do you have
death.
a timeline do you guys have a timeline in your head as to when you really want, kind of not so much, where you can put together a final program and present it? I mean,
Well, obviously, we'll be back on December 10th to present the budget.
Right.
We're not going to have a program in place that speaks to that, but I think we can have a parallel track that leads us down the path of a pay-as-you-throw option and the budget at the same time. But I think we want to make sure we get this program correct and right and palatable to the community, rather than plugging any budget gaps. or
Okay, I
anything
guess
like that.
the direct question I should ask
Sure.
is, are we looking at trying to plug in something in pay-as-you-throw or waste whatever into into fiscal year 25's budget? Or are we gonna do the budget without?
I think we're gonna do the budget without it, but there is an option to implement by July 1st of 2025. It all depends on, does the board wanna ask the question themselves and say, yes, we're doing pay-as-you-throw, do you wanna take it to town meeting? Is there another approval path? So there is a possibility to implement for July 1st.
But we're not
there
We're not
yet.
developing your budget based on this?
No.
Okay.
Well, but one thing to think about is, if we just adopted the policy with fees, we can do that.
we
But,
just
but the money
decided we
goes,
don't
well,
want
well, the money goes, no, I mean, if we took option 3, which brings us some money. If you don't create enterprise fund, that goes into the general fund. If you create enterprise fund, it goes to town meeting. So, again, not necessarily for that, but mechanically, how we, implement, is that money earmarked or not, will determine how, also, is there a path through town meeting or not.
Right.
John?
Yeah. We have a 3-year contract, right?
5.
5-year
5-year
contract with 4.5.
So how does that escalate every year?
It literally goes up, there's no escalator, there's a simple lump sum increase, it's, I think, $15,000.
I think there's an escalator on the Covanta.
There's an escalator on the waste
waste
disposal. The
disposal.
hauling contract does not have a percentage increase.
So the hauling contract is fairly,
It goes
It's
up by,
it's predictable.
Yeah, it goes
Yeah.
up, I wanna say
it's
it's
just the
15,000
amount
a
of
year.
waste is gonna drive.
The amount of waste goes up every year, and that rate goes up by the CPI, North Urban numbers, so.
That's the risk. If we don't do something in the next year, then we have a risk of it going up a little bit.
Perhaps.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah,
well,
so-
it's gonna go
It's
up.
gonna go up. Whether our
It's gonna
tonnage goes up
continue
or
to go
not.
up, and our tonnage, if we can keep our tonnage, decreasing, that will obviously help the budget. The other thing is, what do we do when the state bans something else from the waste stream? And that winds up being an additional cost. What do we do when the state shuts down one of these incinerators? We're running out of places to dispose of things in this state. It's going to get prohibitively expensive year over year. We have a very good disposal cost right now. That's not gonna hold too much longer, outside of the contract.
So,
Chris?
I know you're losing patience with me, but. So I would like to see, if we're asking him to go back and just think of different options, for me, I would like to see something that would be a program structure with a base of, say, 135 gallon per family, but something different than bags for overflow. So whether it's another 35 gallon that families can opt into somehow and we can track, I just think that one positions us better to stay in that capability to be fully automated, which might drive down rates in the future. I think managing bags is a pain in the tush for a lot of people. I mean, I certainly would not want to stick a bag at the end of my driveway with anything in there that a dog or raccoon's just gonna rip open and, drive up the end of the street and see it all over the road in the morning. And I know this is hard, I don't know if there's an answer to this, but I personally think that would be valuable information for me to understand if there's an option there.
Yeah, we absolutely could, and that is something that I believe Concord is doing an additional 35 gallon on top of their program starting this year. So
okay.
we're starting to see this data out there. So we'll look at that, and I think that kind of a guidance, that's helpful for us because it does give us a place to start. And kind of back to the comment you made, Andrea, about the budget. Again, if we agree and the guidance is we're not using this as a revenue generator, we're looking at this to meet all those other goals, it doesn't really need to be part necessarily of the major budget conversation because we're not plugging the gap with this money. We're looking to make the
But-
program better.
I think previously in prior discussions, looked at this as plugging a gap and as a revenue generator, and I think that the budget task force, looked at it as one of the options to help plug the budget. So I just think, that's why,
Yeah.
I asked
Yeah,
the question, because I think we are doing a bit of a shift now.
Yes.
As to what we're looking at and what our goals are and how we're gonna implement them. So that's
I think if we can make some short gains with those nonprofits, relook at your policy, do you want to continue that policy? There's some short gains we can get as well out of this and meet the goals.
But I would also just, to Chris's point on the 35s, when we had this discussion probably a year ago, we heard from seniors, I can't move a 65-gallon can up my driveway or up the hill. So that also argues for, could we do 235s in some way? Because for those who are, for whatever reason, incapable of moving a lot of cart, that is easier. And that's with nonprofits, so I would just, I think be offline, ask for the, what is the housing authority numbers look like? Because
Yeah, we have those numbers.
When I was on the board, we were, some years we kind of really, the state sets the rent.
Yeah.
There were people paid like $80 a month when they got done with their drugs and so forth. And you can't run a housing authority on that, so, yeah, 10 grand sounds like not much money, but it may be for that budget. I don't know right now.
Yep.
where
We'll
they
dig into
stand.
that a little bit more.
I would agree with that.
Chris, just to answer your question, because you did ask, we did filter the survey results, so if we look at families 5 and above, 40% of them are fitting in a 35-gallon container, based on their responses. So we'll pull some more, now that we kind of know what you want to look at, we'll pull some more data. If we feel like we need to do some additional engagement, give us that guidance too. I mean, if we feel like we want, a joint workshop with FinCom or with Westford Recycle, let us know and we can start kind of putting those things together. We want to build something that's actually going to be successful.
Well, I think to the point, is pay as you throw a refrigerator or not? It probably be something of a refrigerator, but the point is if you reduce the trash, it's a cost containment. So it's the same thing from a budgetary standpoint, you get the same place. It's just how you get there.
Yeah, I'd love to have a pay-as-you-throw that didn't make a dime because people just stopped using it.
Right.
That really is the goal. I
Do you
mean,
want to say something, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm going out of turn.
Every resident has a turn, so you're fine.
Elizabeth Sawyer, 6 Holly Lane Recycling Commission, and one of the windshield survey reviewers.
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
It was very interesting, and I urge you to consider your orientation to trash, but to consider this. Everything I see indicates that how much trash people generate is not exclusively, but largely driven by their position around what is trash. So it is not family size, it is not the number of kids, it is, do they use all these options to just easily recycle, upcycle stuff in all the bins around town? You can put toys, games, clothes, stuffed animals in there, or does it go in the trash? Do they buy less because they are trying to keep their costs low as a family, and so they use thrifting and hand-me-downs? Family friendly can very much include less trash. In my cycles, I know my neighbors, I know how many kids they have. There is not the correlation between household size and trash that you would necessarily presume. It is, again, do they use the dishwasher or single-use water bottles and plates and cups? So we can make choices around less trash. We are to the place where reducing volume is the only way to stem the tide of how expensive this is going to be forever. Mike is not in any way exaggerating when he talks about one of these incinerators going down. It will. Will Alabama and Ohio continue to take our trash? We hope, because we have no place to put it here. Every year, we make it kind of invisible that we're in a crisis in the state, and that is why there's no grant money available for 64-gallon carts, because the state needs us to go smaller. The way forward is less trash, and the Recycling Commission is here to help people get all the stuff that they're putting in the trash that doesn't have to. And most of that is available in ways that don't cost them anything. And we're trying to bring it to town with zero waste days and other things, so they don't have to travel to do that.
And, I know I've said this before and I'm a broken record, but I absolutely agree with everything you said. But we need to get the education out there, and somehow we are not doing that, okay? And that is not to put any blame or fault on the recycling commission, because I know how much you do. I thought I participated in the zero waste day. You saw me, I thought it went, I thought it went really well. I hope it went as well as it looked to me at that point. But for some reason, we're still just not getting the word out.
And you're right, and the best education is a 35-gallon cart. No joke. It is. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I mean, do you have to go on, Mike?
I'm good.
Okay, great. I mean, we got,
There are more comments, so I'm just gonna,
Take your way.
I'll just repeat the comments and then we'll move on. They're just comments, I don't think. So Christina Green writes, you could allow 1 barrel, 32-gallon within the levy with bags for occasional overflow. If households will not regularly fit into a 32-gallon, they could pay an annual fee for a second cart. Many towns do this. We had that conversation. Heather Fitzpatrick writes, these don't seem like this doesn't seem like it should be so difficult. Free 35-gallon barrel. Use those old $5 stickers on an extra bag, or $15 per barrel. So we'll take those comments under consideration.
good. Thanks. Moving on. New and old business. First, is there a request from the Board of Health to appoint the public health nurse to the vacant Board of Health seat on the Community Behavioral and Mental Health Committee? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consider request from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to establish a membership seat for high school juniors and seniors living in Westford. Joe actually has got family in town. He's not online tonight. Andrew certainly can answer questions.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually had, the committee has had a lot of interest from students at Westford Academy. A couple of the students actually approached us and said, hey, we'd love to participate and be part of the committee. So it just seemed to the committee to make sense that we should have a student representative on the committee. And so that's why, we're at, the select board, appoints the members, so that's why the committee's come to us to ask us if we would agree to expand the committee to add a high school student. And we also, initially, we were just thinking in terms of the academy, but realized that, there are high school seniors and juniors who are at the academy, the tech, who are homeschooled, who go to private schools, so basically just opening it up to any junior or senior here in Westford. And then I guess the question is, and we don't know the answer to this, is whether or not that student can be a voting member or not. DEI isn't an elected committee, so 18 years old or older doesn't apply, but I'm not sure, but is it up to us to decide?
No,
whether or not?
I want to check it with town council. I did try to do a little bit of research this afternoon, but there's nothing specific on the Massachusetts website regarding open meetings. My inclination is that they would have to be 18 to be a voting member, but let me double check and then report back.
What does the school committee do? Because don't they have?
They don't vote.
They don't vote. They're
But-
just a
but- but
representative.
That board's elected, not a, so,
Yeah,
so
we
this is
just wanna
different.
know whether there's a
They get rid of Kingsman as an example. So, John?
I had a question. I thought DEI committee, the school has their own DEI committee, right?
No.
Don't you work together with them? I thought you were working really
No.
closely with
They
the
had a
school.
DEI coordinator, but that was not part of the override.
Yeah, they had the diversity curriculum coordinator. That position no longer exists.
Oh, okay.
So we don't have a perfect
Don't have a link to
handshake
the schools
anymore.
other than
No.
this. Over there.
I think it's as much a connection with this population as opposed to
Yeah.
an
The
official
school.
link to the
Right.
schools.
Right.
Well, I was thinking that they had representation in a different way, so.
I see,
okay.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So, do you recommend that we make a motion, or just encourage them that we will,
I would
if they
say-
make a nomination, we'll,
My thought would be to
Expand.
make a motion that we approve the position, and if they can be voting, yes, if not,
They're just an
they're just
attending.
they're just
and they
attending.
input.
But either way, they're on the committee, and we could,
so moved.
Second.
all in favor?
I'm sorry, just a quick question. Does it have to be, you said high school senior and then you went junior and
I think we said
seniors?
junior or senior, didn't we?
It says junior, seniors here.
Junior, senior.
Is there a if it's a response from mature sophomore doesn't fit the need? I mean, I don't know why you guys are limiting it
Well,
yourselves.
this is just what they asked for. I mean,
I understand, I'm just asking,
But I think they'll get a really good crop of juniors and seniors.
so they don't, we need to worry about it. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. If you're gonna get enough
If we
people,
don't get a good crop, we'll
then
be
you
back.
can lower it. All right.
Do you have a sophomore in mind?
I do not, I just didn't want them to feel excluded, you know? Come on, we want to be inclusive.
Well, we'll be rotating off because they will no longer be a junior or senior after 2 years, so it'll be a rotating seat for sure.
And they can always, the DI committee can always decide to make it a 6-month position, so they rotate faster. I mean, it doesn't need to be a full year. So.
Did we vote?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
No,
No, we didn't.
no, you didn't.
I don't
You
think we
yeah, made a motion.
Well, I thought you were gonna ask for comment, and then you just.
We
did
voted,
that.
then Chris commented afterwards.
Sorry, my bad.
should we, I mean, do you feel like you voted? We can call it the vote
I
again.
didn't really get my voting, because I was trying to ask a question, but if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, just to
Okay,
call
so
for the vote again.
the motion was to approve the addition of a student representative to the DEI committee, and the decision of whether it be a voting member or not will be determined by town council. And there was a motion by Andrea, seconded by Tom, and so all in favor?
Aye.
Third, to authorize town manager to sign EOHLC documents associated with the sale of 23 Stone Ridge Road.
And those documents are not prepared yet by EOHLC. This is, so if you're not comfortable, I understand, but the sale is supposed to happen very soon, so it's really just to, a note back to EOHLC that we're notified that the sale is going on and this unit will still stay on our subsidized housing inventory.
I guess you want to see the document, or do you want to trust the town manager?
Well, I think
Well, I
this is
guess
one we should-
actually, I would say contingent upon review of town council and
Sure.
approval of town council, and then I'm fine.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll second.
so the motion is to approve.
Authorize the town manager to
yes.
sign the EEO-HLC documents contingent upon approval by town council.
So motion and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Board reports and updates. Do we have any?
I'll give a quick one. So Park and Rec at their meeting,
What did you do about swimming?
what's that?
What did you do about the fees? Swimming?
We have
fees.
not, that's what I'm giving you an update on. At our November 4th meeting, the Park and Rec Commission had about 20-plus residents in attendance to hear the commission discuss the possibilities of implementing a beach fee for residents. Anticlimactic, the commission decided to table the discussion till the next meeting because some commissioners had some questions about the layout of the beaches. There's some complexities involved with the actual collection of fees because we have parks that are served by the same parking lots as our beaches, and our fee collection right now is done at the entrance to the parking lot. Some of our beaches don't have a physical separation. Edwards does. Porch doesn't, so there's gonna be some discussion, can we provide a physical separation, change the collection point so that we don't impact people who want to, say, use the playgrounds,
Right.
but not the beaches. So that's why it was tabled to the next meeting, which is December 2nd, and then as just a public announcement, we are also having we'll be asking for a public, what do we call it, a news flash, to alert the public about the Park and Rec Commission's conversation regarding the replacement of the artificial turf fields at Nutting Road. There are some concerns about replacing the artificial turf and some desires to use natural grass, so we're looking for public comment on that as well at the next meeting. So that's my updates on recreation.
We spent $900,000
Yes.
with the CPA money.
Yes. So, thank you.
Thanks. 10 minutes report, Kristen.
Great, so I alluded to this at the beginning of the meeting to discuss the select board meeting dates for the remainder of 2024. So we are meeting on November 26th, December 10th as our regular meeting. If we went the second and fourth Tuesdays, we'd be meeting on December 24th, which I know no one wants to meet that day. So if we could hold the 17th in case there's any business, so that would be Tuesday, December 17th at 7 p.m. The next option would be New Year's Eve, and I'm sure we don't want to be together on New Year's Eve either.
We could meet at one of the bars in town.
We could provide some economic development, some tax incentive. So if you could hold that date, and we'll be in touch if that's necessary.
While we're at it, let's look at the schedule for 2025.
Yep, so 2025 schedule is before you. There was one change. So November 11th is Veterans Day. So we just have it asterisk right now. I think we can make a decision in the September timeframe what we want to do that second week of November. But all other holidays we believe check out to not have any conflicts.
Including religious holidays?
I'm sorry?
Including religious holidays?
We believe so, but we will triple check that.
I checked Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Passover were good.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrea. All right, so moving on to purchase orders. So the first one is for Dennis K. Burke for delivery of fuel under the state contract in the amount of $17,023 as requested by the Public Works Department. We also just look forward to presenting more of that data on our fuel savings after we have a few more months. Sourcewell for IT services for all covered professional services in the amount of $21,615 as requested by the Technology Department. You already did item.
Actually, I don't think we, so, under 3, we accepted the gift. We did not accept the PO, so we think we still want to approve
Okay.
Article 3 as a PO.
So number 3, Friends of Bruce Freeman Rail Trail for the rail crossing supplies in the amount of $3,640 as requested by the Public Works Department. Pro AV Systems for the updated AV equipment in the town hall meeting rooms in the amount of $87,692 as requested by the town manager's office. You approved the ARPA funding earlier in this meeting for that. C&D Underwater for eco-harvesting removal of invasive vegetation growth and biomass in Forge Pond in the amount of $16,458 as requested by the Land Use Department. Impact Speed and Agility for fiscal 25 recreation programming in the amount of $22,543 as requested by the Recreation Department. And Nighthawks Track and Fields for fall, winter, spring programming in the amount of $15,188 as requested by the Recreation Department.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the last is a contract for EM Lofgren for the septic system replacement at East Boston Camps in the amount of $83,272 as requested by the Land Use Management Department. As a reminder to the board, you set aside $40,000 in ARPA funding for this. The bids came in much higher. We are requesting from the Conservation Commission the supplemental funding to come out of their EBC fund.
What's the balance of that
What's the
fund?
balance of
I
that
believe it's
fund?
$140,000.
178.
178, okay.
I'm sorry, how much?
178 and change.
Okay, I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to waive reading of correspondence?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, good night, Westford.
Good night, Westford.